Did you say earlier in your I can't remember whether you said it or someone else said it about the number of coal contracts. What do you think your current percentage is of contract that you're getting right now currently from the PRB is under contract and percentage is not under contract? Can you say that, or you?
I would rather. I'd rather not.
You rather
get
not
into
say
those
that?
types
Okay.
of.
Okay. I'm just curious. Commissioner, you have any more questions?
Yeah, I do. Somebody mentioned that the CNW was allowed into the Powder River Basin, and that was a good thing in the sense that now we have more traffic out of the Powder River Basin than ever before, and more competitive rates in some places. There's another railroad that has proposed to go into the Powder River Basin, the DM&E, but the DM&E has had problems getting financing. And they have not been able to get utilities to step up to the plate and sign long-term contracts that would help them get the money in the financial markets in order to do their expansion. If indeed there needs to be more competition out of the Powder River Basin, why haven't the utilities, or for that matter the coal companies, step up to the plate and sign those contracts and given investors the indication that the DM&E would be a profitable venture if indeed it got its resources and got built in?
Commissioner Mulvey, I would observe that there remains, even today, without the federal loan, there remains substantial interest from the electric industry in the DM&E. I am not privy to the term sheet that the DM&E may have circulated to our membership for what kinds of terms and conditions it would offer, but there's certainly, one would have to think there's going to be, I am aware of the interest on Wall Street in the DM&E and of not only domestic but foreign investors as well, and it seems as though there may be an opportunity for the railroad to be built anyway. I believe that the electric industry will take coal. It's a matter of staging so that the companies can anticipate the time when that railroad may be likely to deliver coal into the marketplace and have it staged so that the company's contracts with either of the existing two carriers are nearing expiration, so they're not under contract with multiple carriers and paying for more coal than they need. That's what I'm being told at this point in time, and that, in fact, I was on a call recently with the Dakota, Minnesota, and Eastern leadership, and they remain very committed to the project. And as far as I know, the electric industry is trying to move in that direction under a need to maintain our reliability and fuel supply at the same time.
Well, it's been a long-term project. It's been more than 10 years now since they've begun this, and so far not a single potential user has signed a contract to allow him and to give him the opportunity to show the financial markets, hey, look, I'm going to have customers for this coal if I indeed begin bringing it out.
Well, and I'm going to speculate here and be outspoken, which I probably shouldn't. If I would look at my counsel right now, he would probably say, don't say anything. But as a utility, you have to think about, you have an unbuilt railroad. It's like buying vaporware in the old IT side that we used to talk about. You know, you have two programs out there. You have one that's up and running, and you have one where the guy comes in and says it's going to do everything you want plus 35 other things. And so are you going to spend the money for put money into that project and bank on that for your business when there's nothing there? You indicated it's been 10 years coming and it's still not going. Do I want to go out and sign a contract for the lifeblood of my company with something that doesn't have spikes in the ground, doesn't have the permitting and the financing in place? And even if I did sign a contract, I would not allow that party to go wave it to Wall Street, because if they were not able to perform and I had to get alternative service, I would not want the whatever alternative options I might have, knowing that I have a contract with them. So, and again, I'm speculating. I'm not involved with the DM&E, but I would say there could be many reasons why you have not heard of contracts with shippers, and they might be out there, they may not, but I could say there's probably a lot of other work going on behind the scenes.
That's the practical coal buyer speaking, coal
That's right.
contractor speaking.
We talked about the what you were talking about, the railroad's costs, and that should be reflected in their rates. But isn't that sort of getting back to cost-based regulation? I mean, one of the most important factors of staggers was to deregulate the rail industry. And we moved from cost-based pricing to demand-based pricing.
Right.
And demand-based pricing, differential pricing, is based upon the elasticity of demand. Captive shippers have an inelastic demand, therefore you're going to be paying more. And the railroads don't really have much control over how much, well, they produce what they're going to produce based upon a whole lot of considerations. We don't regulate their inputs. The coal mines, for example, aren't required to produce a certain amount of coal, and the railroads are going to produce a certain amount of train supply based upon what they see to be demand and how they're going to maximize profits. Isn't that sort of rational economic behavior on their part?
It is, but I don't think, as I spoke earlier, I don't think when staggers was enacted that Congress envisioned having a duopoly in both the East and the West, that it was expected that there would be active and vigorous competition among the rail carriers, and that would be the mechanism that would move us away from cost-based regulatory processes. And again, I submit the argument that we are heading into a time where that system is becoming broken, and that there needs to be some, at least a look at it and some measured response to that environment.
Well, to some extent, we still have a cost-based regulatory process with regard to the standalone cost test for the railroads, and that is cost-based in the sense that you look at what costs would have to be in order to operate a railroad and have a fair return on investment. Are you critical of the SAC process? Do you think there should be some alternative to the standalone rail test?
We all agree it's complicated, that it's theoretical, that it's hard to get your hands around, but to date, we don't know of anything better. I mean, it was posited through a process that took most of the 80s to come to agreement as to what it should be, with having the courts involved as well as the regulators and the shippers. Is there a better system? Probably. Is it going to be hard to come up with? The answer is yes.
And we're trying. I mean,
Right.
you saw our changes we made.
And I guess I would like to throw a question back to you. I mean, there is some speculation that at some point in the fairly near future, competitive shippers are going to be paying rates higher than captive shippers. In a free market, in a market that doesn't have power, would you expect that to happen?
No, you wouldn't expect that to happen. And of course, one of the issues of what is a competitive shipper and what is a captive shipper. A competitive shipper is one that has an alternative. And competitive shippers, much of that traffic is not subject to our regulation. Of course, you might look and say, well, is that traffic as competitive for other modes of transportation as it was at the time of the preemption? And there may have been changes in the overall market and the availability of alternatives that may be allowing railroads now to raise rates in that market to the and of course, there's also, value of service pricing. Some of the things that are being shipped in those are better able to bear higher cost increases. I mean, obviously, computers, for example, can bear a higher shipping cost than coal can. So there's a lot of other factors that might explain that. Two other questions. One, right now, there's no standards for mercury emissions. And, of course, if you burn mercury, part of river-based plants are particularly vulnerable to any changes in mercury emissions. What would that do to your plant here in Kansas City, and if indeed there was a substantial increase in the imposition of requirements with regard to mercury? Would you be able to rapidly invest so that you could handle mercury, or?
We're trying to now. The question you posit that, no, we can't meet the mercury standards that are being proposed out there today with today's technology, but while we were at the plant yesterday, they were actually doing a test on mercury removal with a new compound. I can't get into any details because I don't know them, but we're actively pursuing ways to handle the mercury issue related to the PRB coal. I would hope at the end of the day, if the technology does not exist to remove mercury from PRB, that the economy, that the politicians will understand that they're going to cripple the economy by switching to alternative fuel sources, and there will be a rational decision made at that time.
It was also mentioned about the liability issue for moving things like anhydrous ammonia and others. And as Doug was saying, when you move this sort of stuff, and you can bet the farm. I mean, Graniteville was a serious accident, but the number of fatalities were relatively low. Obviously, an accident in a more populated area or a larger spill, et cetera, could have much more dire consequences. Do you foresee, and the railroads, while they self-insure up to $25 million, it could be devastating on the railroad survival. Do you see any way of the shippers and the railroads partnering so that the railroads do not have to bear the risk of these accidents, moving things like chlorine and anhydrous ammonium and others?
Mr. Mobley, if I may, sir, the Price-Anderson Act that was passed in the 80s is an indemnification on the electric industry, as I understand it, on nuclear issues. And that may provide a template by which we can work with the carriers, or something can be worked out and taken to Congress jointly. Certainly, we understand that with prison terms as the ultimate price for exceeding your emissions, that our CEOs are not going to let their employees are not going to run their generation units out of environmental standards, and that's simply a given. And I don't think any of the several electric industry employees who are in the room would disagree with that. That being said, we're trying to figure out how we keep these systems running, how we permit the storage either on-site or in tank cars or whatever of anhydrous or aqueous ammonia, because we understand the liability concerns and the potential for human life as a loss factor as well. But as I say, I would go back and look at the Price-Anderson Act and the way in which your predecessor agency came to terms with the need to move nuclear waste as well.
Thank you very much.
Someone suggested that they take all the placards off their cars and just put a big target, on the side. And that way everybody would know exactly what it is, and so it'd be a lot easier to identify those cars. But does Edison Electric have a position, has taken a position or made a proposal with regard to the hazardous materials liability limitation issue?
We have not yet.
You have not yet?
Yet.
Does that sounds like you might be thinking about it.
We're thinking about it. We're open to discussions about it. I await a call from my AR on it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.